Good evening, great souls. Welcome to our All Saints' Day Kirtan and Stories. Let's begin this evening now by offering a prayer together. You can repeat these words silently, follow along inwardly, or out loud as you feel to. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, beloved friend God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahasaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar Ji, beloved Guru Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, all saints and sages from all times and all traditions, with love and devotion we invoke your presence and your blessings this evening. Flow through our hearts and our lives in blessing to others, in purification, in upliftment in thy light. Guide our lives ever more surely on the path that leads to freedom in thee. Om Shanti 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 Shanti. So this evening we'll chant together, share a few stories from the lives of saints from a number of different traditions and parts of the world, and try to dive into their consciousness, their blessing. The chants that we'll do are generally written by Swami Kriyananda or Yogananda, but they reflect the fact that all of us have the potential to become saints. And this first chant that we'll do was written by Swami Kriyananda, called Saint Teresa's Admonition. And it contains a beautiful, powerful truth, particularly for these times, although I suppose it applies to any times in history. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. So let's sing this together and offer ourselves into that divine flow.
And then Swami used St. Teresa's own words. He adjusted them slightly, but they are her words.
Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone, God alone, God alone.
as we do with every kirtan, we'll have a moment of silent meditation after each chant. And Saint Teresa is a favorite, and we often talk about her and her philosophy. She's a doctor of the Catholic Church, a very high honor, and not very many women have that honor. It sort of denotes a soul who has incorporated into the fabric of the Catholic religion certain points of doctrine. And Saint Teresa was a great saint and indefatigable. She went all over Spain in her creaky little cart, drawn by a mule or a horse. No suspension system, shall we say. She was just thrown about, and as she got older, she went farther and farther. And that famous story of being swept away in a raging current and then finding herself dry on the other side of the other bank with Jesus standing in front of her is just typical of her old age. She was just indefatigable, as I said. And you know that story. Jesus said to her, "That's how I treat all my friends, Teresa." And she said, "Well, that is why you have so few, my Lord." And she had to face the Spanish Inquisition. She was just demonized by her own first convent when she tried to make reforms. They all ganged up against her. When St. John of the Cross came to her, he had been a Carmelite monk, was a Carmelite monk, but was inspired by her reforms and wanted to do something for men the way she was doing it for women. And he came with his abbot, who was a huge man, and St. John was a little slip of a man. And later, St. Teresa said, "God has sent me a monk and a half." She had a great sense of humor. And then St. John was taken from her and had to suffer at the hands of his fellow monks who rebelled against the idea of losing certain of their so-called rights. And they were just, anyway. He suffered greatly, was finally reunited with Teresa, but they had a dramatic time together, all these intrigues. Finally, I love this. Teresa was praying about, she's trying to do God's work. She feels inspired by Jesus to do these reforms. And she's just being hindered on every hand. The Pope is, giving her a hard time, the representative of the Pope in Spain. It's just intrigue after intrigue, all these thwarting cross currents, as Yogananda would say, of people trying to have power and power over her. And one day she got the inspiration, I'm going to write to the king. I have the King of Heaven on my side. I need the King of Spain on my side. So she wrote him this letter. And then she embarked on her little cart, bumping along through these rutted roads, shaking her body, just terribly, causing a lot of pain, but she went to see the king. Well, turned out the king had a copy of her book that she had been commissioned to write by the Spanish Inquisition, because they wanted to study every word and every experience and every vision. And she was brilliant enough to always couch it in words that made it acceptable. And so the king had this book. It was his constant companion. He had it at his bedside. It traveled with him. So it turned out he was a great admirer of Saint Teresa. And when they met, it was like a meeting of brother and sister. And he became her champion. And that papal representative I told you about, the Vatican representative in Spain, he got booted out on his ear. And everything started to change when you have this king on your side. And so we have the King of Heaven on our side. We have Jesus and all of our masters rooting for us. What Dharmadas said at the beginning about how all of us are potential saints, it reminded me of a club, a so-called club that was started many years ago. I think maybe Haridas started it, although I'm not sure. Yeah, Dharmadas thinks so too. The Future Saints of America. And I've always loved that and held on to that thought, because all of us truly are saints in the making. We may have far to go, or we may be just minutes away. We don't really know. We have to just trust God and keep doing our best and know that someday we will get there. So I will close now with two short little stories about Saint Teresa that really capture for me her great sense of humor and who she really was. So one day she's standing in the kitchen cooking, and she has a heavy frying pan in her hand, when suddenly she's lifted up into this exalted state, like a samadhi. We would call it a samadhi. And all the nuns in the kitchen come running over to her, not because they haven't seen her in samadhi before. That's like old hat happens all the time. They came running over to her because in this heavy frying pan, she had the last of the cooking oil, and the nuns didn't want her to spill it. So that's one story. How many of us cook, and don't you wish in the middle of cooking you could be transported into this other dimension of bliss someday? And the other story is again in the kitchen, and Saint Teresa happened to be by herself in the kitchen, and she was eating partridge. Not vegetarian. There weren't many vegetarians in those days. So it happened that one of the nuns brought a tour into the kitchen. There were all these wealthy donors or high-up people of some sort, and they were aghast to see Saint Teresa gustily eating her partridge. And they expressed their disbelief. "What are you doing?" And she said, "Madam, when I fast, I fast. And when I eat partridge, I eat partridge." And she continued to eat. Everything she did was with joy, with willpower, with love for God. And so, do you want another saint now? Or do you want to do another chant?
We could do one other chant and then have another saint after that.
Okay.
Okay.
Next time I'll talk about a great Sufi saint who is a great favorite of mine.
So we'll sing O Thou King of the Infinite. This is a chant of Yogananda's. And I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy. O thou King of the Infinite, O thou King of the Infinite, I behold thee in samadhi, I behold thee in samadhi, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy, in joy and in more joy, in thy light of mellow joy.
So since we just chant, O thou King of the Infinite, I thought I would just share very briefly about St. Francis of Assisi, who loved Jesus so much with his whole heart. And it reminds me of that story that I've sometimes told you all of St. Francis wandering the countryside, and he came upon a very distraught woman who was very, very poor, and she begged Francis she was so distraught she didn't see what tattered rags he was wearing. She begged him to give her something that she could sell to buy food for her children. And they were all starving, and she just begged him, please, to give her something. And Francis had nothing, except he did have his Bible. And he just really didn't want to part with that. It was the Word of God. He wanted that. He needed that. But this woman's need was greater. And so he gave her the Bible. And she was thrilled, of course. And as he went on his way, he prayed, Lord, I've given away your word. And he was so distraught. And then he heard the voice of Jesus saying to him, Francis, I have written my word on your heart. And that's what we need to do. We need to write God's word on our heart so that it's so emblazoned within us that we never forget and we never stray, and it's always there to comfort us. I love the story of Rama and Sita and Hanuman, their great warrior. And at one point, Hanuman kneels before Rama and he physically opens up his chest. And Hanuman shows Rama his heart. And on Hanuman's heart is written over and over, Ram, Ram, Ram. So that's what we need to do. And these great saints, they're all telling us the same thing. They're all showing us that we need to transcend the hypnotism of this world and fix our minds and our hearts on God. And that's the secret passageway up through the spine to the spiritual eye and out into the absolute reality of God. So I'll tell you a little story about Rabia. I don't think I'm quite pronouncing her name correctly. She lived in the 8th century in what used to be Persia, is now Iran, or is it Iraq? I am not sure. Forgive me. Middle East, but it was Persia at the time. And she was a great Sufi saint. Well, I'll read a poem that she wrote. I love this one. O Lord, if I worship you because of fear of hell, then burn me in hell. If I worship you because I desire paradise, then exclude me from paradise. But if I worship you for yourself alone, then deny me not your eternal beauty. So she was a great saint, very ascetic, and lived a very holy life. And when she was on her deathbed, some of her disciples, her students, came to try to comfort her or say goodbye to her or ease her suffering because she was in a lot of pain. And so one of them said, "Mother, one is not a true lover of God who isn't happy who isn't willing to suffer because it is God's will." And she said, "No, something more than that is needed." So another student offered, "Mother, he is no true lover of God who isn't happy to suffer because the Lord wills it." And she said, "No, that smacks of ego." And then they said very humbly, "Mother, tell us, who is a true lover of God?" And she said, "It is one who forgets his suffering in contemplation of the divine." And so let us strive to do that. Transcend our bodily discomforts and pains and soar in spirit. It reminds me also of the great Catholic saint, Saint Bernadette. And one time she was, this is after the visions of Lourdes, and she had wanted to marry and have a family, but the priests and clergy around her would not allow that to happen. And she went into a convent instead. Well, she was bullied and tormented by one of the older nuns who saw this young, beautiful, sort of glamorous person who'd had these amazing visions of the Divine Mother. And this older nun was very jealous because she hadn't experienced anything like that. She'd just been stern and using her willpower all these years, and her vocation was faltering because she didn't like this young nun. She felt all this hatred for her. And one day she just couldn't stand it anymore, and she confronted Bernadette, and she said, "Bernadette, when we have our walk out in the courtyard, you're always limping, and I know you're just doing it to get attention. And you've never suffered like I have, and how can you claim all this divine grace when I've been here for all these decades and I've never had any of these experiences, and you've never suffered?" So Bernadette said to her, "Well, it's true, I haven't suffered, and I'm sorry. I wish I could help you somehow to overcome this hatred that you feel in your heart." And then she thought for a moment, and she thought, well, maybe this would help you. And she lifted up the hem of her garment, and she showed this nun a festering cancer on her leg, which was pretty horrible and right down to the bone and extremely painful. That's why she was limping when they went outside for their walk every day. Well, this nun's life was changed completely, and she began to carry Saint Bernadette wherever she went so that she could do tapasya to make up for her great sin of doubting the Lord's word manifest in another person. So now we'll have another chant. chant. Let's sing this one. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. And when we chant this, sometimes people feel a little hypocritical because they think, well, you know, I also want a new car and a new couch and I want other things. But think of it as an affirmation. Eventually, we will be tired of this world and we will want only God. And think of it as in another way, which is that everything that we think we want, that car or couch or whatever it is, really what we want is only satisfied in God. We really want only Him.
I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. I want only We'll sing, no birth, no death, no caste have I, father, mother have I none. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. No birth, no death, nor caste have I. No birth, no death, nor caste have I. Father, mother, have I none. Father, mother, have I none. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Mind or intellect, nor ego feeling. Mind or intellect, nor ego feeling. Sky nor earth, nor metals and mine. Sky nor earth, nor metals and mine. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Beyond all fancy, formless am I. Beyond all fancy, formless am I. Free from dreams of all earthly life. Free from dreams of all earthly life. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. 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 Bondage I fear not, I'm free in thy joy. Bondage I fear not, I'm free in thy joy. Free, oh free, Lord, free in thy bliss. Free, oh free, Lord, free in thy bliss. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. 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 No birth, no death, no caste have I. No birth, no death, no caste have I. Father, mother, have I none. Father, mother, have I none. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Oh, I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Mind or intellect, nor ego feeling. Mind or intellect, nor ego feeling. Sky nor earth, nor metals and mine. Sky nor earth, nor metals and mine. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Oh, I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Beyond all fancy, formless am I. Beyond all fancy, formless am I. Free from dreams of all earthly life. Free from dreams of all earthly life. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Oh, I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. I am he, blessed spirit, I am he. Bondage I fear not, I'm free in thy joy. Bondage I fear not, I'm free in thy joy. Free, Blessed Spirit, I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am just sort of interject a thought here that may seem a little obvious in one sense, but I think in our own lives it's not obvious at all, which is Yogananda gave us this little aphorism that a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And that simple aphorism, you don't have to change the camera just for this. I'm not going to expatiate here for a long time. let it be. You don't need to see a close-up. It's not that relevant. What we came to realize, one of many things that we came to realize in India, at least somehow it hit home, is how self-selecting sainthood is. It's kind of like what Nirmala was sharing earlier about Saint Teresa. When the Lord said, go form a new convent in some far-off corner of Spain, she just hopped in her wooden cart and bumped along down the road to form that convent, because it wasn't going to happen unless she went there and did it. That was God's will, she did it. And that's kind of the same math, or the same equation that it takes to be a saint. Is God says do something, you do it. And follow the practice, follow the path, basically. Most people just don't. They're just not interested. They've got other things to do. You look around on the street or in your workplace or among your larger family, typical earthly family, and most people just aren't interested. They've got lots of other things to follow and tune into, and they're very much engaged in the drama of this world. And it can get kind of discouraging. We're sort of predisposed to think, oh, well, I could never get there. So I love the reference Nirmala made to the future saints of America. I mean, I remember, we'd get together, we'd talk about it. This is 40 odd years ago now, but and it was kind of humorous on one level, and yet we took it seriously. But I mean, we were also just kind of thinking, who, me? I mean, that's pretty outlandish. But on another level, it's like, well, why not you? Why not him? Why not me? Why not any of us? And it's just a question of being willing to stay with it. A saint is a sinner who never gave up. And if we never give up, then sooner or later we have to get there, because there's no other place to go. So anyway, take heart in that, because that's a lot of what these stories show us. The saints show us that it can be done. They show us that it's possible. I remember sitting down to my first all-day meditation, and there's this, you're staring down 8 hours of a sadhana, essentially, although you can get up and stand when you need to and during a chanting break or whatever. But still, I mean, it's 8 hours, and it was a little daunting. And I remember thinking, well, darn it, these other people are going to do it, so how come I can't do it? And it doesn't mean that it was always fun. You know, it was a little challenging from time to time. But wow, you know, it's powerful. You get around people who are doing it, it's wonderful. So anyway, I just wanted to share that thought because Swamiji also pushed us to expect sainthood and to strive for it. And he was cautious about identifying himself. I mean, saints don't typically say, well, I'm a saint. But nevertheless, he gave us the beautiful way of looking at this. He said, I'm a disciple of a great master. Of course I have high potential. It's not me personally, but it's his power. And if I open myself to it, then anything is possible. So let's just remember that in our lives, because it's easy to fall into the thought that, oh, well, I'll never make it. And it's like, well, then we end up self-predicting the future. And that's not a future that we want to hold to, because it's, for one thing, it's not true. We will all make it. Just a matter of sticking with it. So let's sing. How about if I do one on the harmonium?
Okay.
So this is Master's chant. Wink has not touched my eyes ever since I saw thee. Has not touched my eyes ever since I saw thee. Hang on, honey, I've got to turn your mics down if you're going to do that. Wink has not touched my eyes ever since I saw thee. Oh, wink has not touched my eyes ever since I saw thee. Without thee my breath does not want to flow. Without thee my breath does not want to flow. Wink has not touched my arm ever since I saw thee. Oh, wink has not touched my arms ever since I saw thee. Thou didst say thou wouldst come, but thou hast not come. Thou didst say thou wouldst come, but thou hast not come. Restless is my soul day and night. Restless is my soul day and night. Wink has not touched my arms ever since I saw thee. Wink has not touched my arms ever since I saw thee. Without thee my breath does not want to flow. Without thee my breath does not want to flow. Wink has not touched my arms ever since I saw thee. Oh, wink has not touched my arms ever since I saw thee. Thou didst say thou wouldst come, but thou hast not come. Thou didst say thou wouldst come, but thou hast not come. Restless is my soul day and night. Restless is my soul day and night. Restless is my soul day and night. touched my heart ever since I saw you. So I'll share a story that isn't one that we would typically think of sharing on an evening honoring the saints, but this relates to Swamiji's mother, and she had a very deep experience when before Swamiji was born, when she was carrying him, and just felt a great blessing coming into her life and into this world. And it stands to reason that that would have been so, given that he himself is a great soul, and she, having such an intimate connection with him, would herself have to be a great soul on some level just to be the instrument for that. But this particular story took place many years later, when Swamiji was had started Ananda, and Ananda was still relatively young at the time. And I believe that the specific situation he was having, it was the anniversary of his mother's death. That's what it was. And so this would have put it into the 1980s. And he wanted to offer a special prayer. This is traditional in many cultures, but it's particularly so in India, that on the anniversary of someone's passing who's close to you, you honor them in some way. And I remember being amazed to see the newspapers certain sections would be filled, sometimes with whole full-page ads honoring, the patriarch, the founder, the mother, whatever, some soul who, in some cases, had passed away 50 years earlier or more. And, and those ads are like, many, many thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands in some cases. And, there's no special advantage. It's not like they're advertising something. But anyway, he wanted to make a special prayer on the anniversary of her passing. But he found himself having a kidney stone attack and was in such pain that at a certain point he could not really pray for her, and he sort of felt guided to pray to her, and felt this blessing come to him. And it struck me that when we, in the Catholic tradition, a saint has to be dead, sort of by definition. They're not made saints while they're living. God forbid that they fall from that categorization, or that it go to their head or whatever. All of that sort of thing. It's iffy. Things are sort of up in the air when somebody's still alive. Once they're safely dead, and there's a miracle or two that can be associated with them, then they can be declared a saint. Well, it struck me that a soul like Swamiji's mother is a channel, and Swamiji and others, who have gone Rajasi, that we don't even think about so much necessarily. Sister Gyanamata, they are channels through which a blessing can flow if we activate that channel. And of course, obviously, Master and the great ones. But to call upon that saint sincerely and with devotion is to draw a blessing and potentially to draw a miracle. And that kind of thing isn't something that we sort of get explained overtly, but it's something that we can explore in our lives. And all of us have that potential. And so if we think All Saints' Day is followed by All Souls' Day in the Christian tradition. Honoring the ancestors, honoring those who have gone before, and many, I've felt like I practically memorized the astral ascension ceremony because we did so many astral ascensions in the last handful of years, and it's easy to sort of start to forget about people who have gone before us, but they are with us. And they're not just with us in an abstract sense, they're with us in our hearts, and they're with us in our spirit in that they want the best for us. And so if you feel to, call on one of them to channel a blessing into your life, because they too are saints in the making, as are all of us. So we'll just close now with a chant that we almost never hear, and you can take this into your heart and into your life. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Thy will not mine, Lord, thy will not mine. Let's chant Om now, sending light and blessings world, acting as instruments for God's grace to flow more and more profoundly. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti. God bless you. Be well.